Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Happy Monday. Hope you're doing very, very well. Hope you've had a lovely weekend. We are here to talk all things Arsenal, as always. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're on Spotify, whatever. Do all the liking, subscribing, etc. stuff and so forth. Thank you for being here. Before we get into the football, Bhavs, you've been on another gallivant. You were at Soccer Aid yesterday.
Yes, I've always got something to go to. I wonder what's next. Look, the Soccer Aid was nice. It was nice seeing Jack Wilshere play, Theo Walcott as well, even Azar. Some really top players in action. But also where I was sat, I was lucky enough to be in the Chelsea box areas. And I'll tell you what, right? Chelsea's boxes are very posh. The way you enter the box, you have these ladies come up to you and they're like, very nice. Hello, sir. How you doing, sir? I'm not used to this posh treatment. They got all their... One thing Chelsea have got, right, is if you go to their stadium, they've got their trophies littered everywhere. Every single part has their trophies to make sure everyone knows they've won a European Cup, they've got this Premier League, they want you to make sure you know that. We were actually in my box as well. There was a Sheffield United youth player, I think. I don't know his name. He was like in the under 15s, so I didn't really get a photo with him. Maybe Georgia knows him. He was like a midfielder. But yeah, we were next to Molly May as well, so yeah, she was there.
Bit of Tommy. She we recorded something just before this and we were talking about Tommy Fury and his a bit of a tragic throw-in, but we also saw Jack Wilshere. Yeah, it was shocking. We also saw Jack Wilshere, and honestly, I was watching it yesterday and I was just like, we were robbed. He's the way he receives the ball. And I know it's only Soccer Aid, I know, but he just looked so good. That little assist, the roll back, he sat Petr Cech down. We were robbed. Did you see the comments from Abu Dhabi? Sorry, not from Abu Dhabi, from Patrick Vieira about Abu Dhabi, about the injuries?
My biggest what-if player. player. I feel like that.
I've got too many of those, though.
We've got a lot of them, but I don't know. He was special to me. I don't think I saw a talent like that in years, to be honest with you. I still have yet to see somebody that was that complete from a pure footballing perspective. It was scary, and I think people forget because people quote that Liverpool performance post-injury, but pre-injury, Abu Dhabi was not some flimsy physical player. It was a really frightening blend of physicality and technicality, and it was. I struggled to find an apt comparison, to be honest with you. That was somebody that I always felt like could have done something more.
Even Vieira said he thinks he had more than he had in the final third and in the last sort of 30 yards of the pitch and stuff. And, I'm watching Wilshere, I'm hearing those quotes this morning, I'm thinking about Ramsey's career, I'm thinking about Eduardo, and it is funny. Also, this isn't necessarily where we want to start, but I do want to talk about this. When we're kind of judging Wenger post 2006, I feel like time is being kind of more and more gracious to that period in terms of what's coming out about Chelsea and City now, in terms of what we know about the sort of the league was always sort of flush with cash, but we are now in a different economic space in terms of the Premier League and what it is and its sort of competitiveness, sort of worldwide and nationwide, etc. And combine that with the stadium move, combine that with having to move the players on. Look, I wanted Wenger to go at the end, but the amount what you're realising in hindsight he had to deal with is just crazy. Babs, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, he had to go through so much, and even the net spend at the time. I saw a stat, I think when he left, of that he had the lowest net spend by those teams. Like Everton had more, and this is the whole reason to move to the Emirates was to make Arsenal competitive. I think the whole saying was to compete with the likes of Bayern Munich, and he didn't have the opportunity to spend that money. But towards the end, I think what happened was that he started spending that money, and it wasn't as wise. It was a bit forced. Remember that summer we signed Mustafi, Perez, and was it Lacazette? Was that a different window? No, it was Mustafi, Perez, and someone else. Or Xhaka. That's what it was.
Xhaka.
Yeah.
Which in fairness, long term.
yeah. I mean, Lucas Perez is a weird signing, wasn't he? Last, was it deadline day or nearabouts, £18 million. We're thinking, we were so desperate for a striker back then, just to score some goals. He scored like 15 goals. Yeah, he got a hat-trick, I think, was it, in the Champions League. But yeah, no, Arsene Wenger's time, you're right. Look, it gets looked back now and people realise more and more of how hard a job he had. There was a recent clip that I saw on Twitter. I think it was a recent tweet of a photo of an Arsenal team in, was it 08? And it looked poor on quality, like a Boué right wing or something like that. But then they had quotes of the actual performances and how good they were playing. And there was that one season where there was that quote that came out of this is real football or something like that. Or this is perfect football. I don't know what year that came from, but it was just a prime Wenger ball, one touch football. And watching it back, even on the highlights, it just reminds you of how special it was. So he was special, more than you believe.
Yeah, he was more than you believe. I was like, is it Vince McMahon? Is that the meme? He was special. When you consider also how he played and stuff, I didn't say that at the beginning. Yeah, it is funny. I also think how you arrive somewhere always sets the tone, and sometimes you can arrive somewhere. It's like kind of, Klopp had a very different story, but because Wenger came in and was not competitive immediately, but was so competitive for the first period of his time, and then you almost couldn't keep up with that. You then get remembered in a very different way. And I think how you arrive in a league and how your story starts is always a kind of a tone setter. I did feel Wenger was a slight sort of victim of that.
Am I right in saying he won a double in his second year at the club? His first full season?
I think. When did he come? 96.
Yeah, first full season he won a double. Do you realise how crazy that is?
Yeah. And then came out that summer after saying, "Well, we're going to go invincible." I mean, it's just again, I don't think that people remember the history, to be honest with you. Early Wenger was a killer. Coming in from Japan, okay, having no experience at the top level, to do that, but then sustain that, have the confidence to then, in the country that you're competing against, go against what was clear xenophobic pushback. And then on top of it, by the way, it wasn't just the success of the early period in terms of the 10 years, in terms of what Wenger was able to give to the team, but again, I don't think people understand how poor the team was to create the type of football that we did. Like, I think when people start to talk about today's game and we look at Pep and we look at legacy, and we talk about legacy, by the way, we made people fall in love with the game. And, I think that when you start to look back, each summer he lost a major signing, guys. I think I've said it in a previous pod before, but if you actually go back and you look through it, 05, 06, Vieira, 06, 07, Ashley Cole, 07, 08, Henry and Ljungberg, 08, 09, Adebayor. I think the 2009, 2010, no one got lost. Then like in 2010, 11, Fabregas, Nasri left. 2012, Van Persie. I've just rattled off legitimate greats of Arsenal Football Club and potentially the game.
And imagine, put that into today's terms. Imagine Pep losing De Bruyne, then next summer Haaland, then next summer Bernardo Silva, then next summer it's like Rodri. Like these aren't scrubs. These are so he's an incredible player. But we are talking about the past partly because there's not loads going on in the present. There appears to be a bit of a tumbleweed going across the Arsenal sort of community at the minute in terms of certainly the transfer side of things. We've got lots to talk about around it. We want to come to Saka. We want to come to loads of other stuff today. But before we do that, I do think we should talk about this because I think the shape of this window is going to be different. And I'm not sure people have quite prepared themselves for it. And I think we've kind of got used to the last couple of years. I think it was last year, Rice was signed on the 14th of July. Timber was confirmed when he was signed. Rice question, but confirmed. I think Timber was the next day. I think Havertz was done at the end of June. And obviously Raya was kind of looked like more of sort of an opportunity signing. I just can't see that happening this year for a number of reasons. I think the market is different anyway, but also the Euros is a massive thing. So we might have to get used to Bhavs being a bit more patient this year and sort of having to sort of deal with scraps in terms of links and stuff. I also do feel, because the transfer window opens officially on the 14th of June. I think it closes officially on the 30th of August. I'm pretty sure it's not actually the 31st, I think it's the 30th. It's a Friday. That's 77 days. We have to be a bit patient. Obviously, we want to get our business done as soon as possible. But is this going to have to be a sort of, ironically, we're talking about Wenger. It felt like Wenger, we did sort of leave things a little bit late. Obviously, we had the, famous examples of the Ozils, et cetera, et cetera. I do think we're going to have to get used to a different shape of a window this year. What do you think?
Yeah. Look, I think Arsenal fans have gotten used to the idea of that marquee signing going into the window. So last year, you're right, Declan Rice, we knew about that from December. this was the number one target. So it was reported.
George knew about it from 2021.
Yeah, George predicted it. So, but we had an idea of what it looked like. We had an idea of the plan, right? And so fans can start to think about their future lineups. And this is how he's going to play there, and this is going to be that. And then the year before that was Gabriel Jesus going into the window. But this window, we don't really have that. You could say Šeško maybe is, because Šeško's links kind of started right towards the end of the season, but it doesn't feel as prominent or as strong, and there's a lot more uncertainty around that as well. And I don't think fans are entirely convinced that Šeško is the right option. There is some fans that advocate the Osimhen route, a more experienced striker who gives exactly what you want, but spending a bit more money. There are also some fans on the Isak train. You've got Šeško himself as well. Some people think midfield instead. So there's a lot of confusion of what Arsenal's priority is, where in previous windows it's been clear: get Jesus, get Declan Rice. And so I think that's why I think Arsenal fans are kind of finding it hard to adapt to that. And we know how Arsenal social media works, especially Arsenal Twitter. They need rumours to just stay sane every single day. If there's not a rumour or an update, then something's going wrong and nothing's happening, and Edu Gasper's got the barbecue open. But yeah, you're right. I think Arsenal fans just need to realise you're right. It's a different window in terms of you might even see a few sales this time before we sign a few players, because I think for once we actually have players that will go for money.
By the way,
yeah, might have to as well. With FFP stuff as well, and especially if we want to sign some big name players. If we're going to spend a near record amount, again, I don't think we're going to break the record for Declan Rice, but let's just say we were to go for Osimhen and it would cost a similar amount of money, but we're going to have to sell. You can't go and sign him straight away, and it's been different for Arsenal fans because normally it's sign first then sell after, and we could talk about the second half of the window.
Yeah, George, I think it is going to be a different window. Again, also because I think a lot of the conversations, that sort of centrifugal piece that we get in and we go, right, there is our Declan Rice. I don't think that level of, obviously there's always question marks, but I think the question marks, if they can ever be as few as possible, they were with Declan Rice in terms of, is that a good signing? That was kind of the central point of the window. Obviously there was the question marks of whether he'd go to Man City, etc., but there was at least a sort of almost like something we could all admire, something we could all aspire to. And it doesn't feel like we have that this window, and I wonder if that's going to affect the conversations and affect how we sort of look at the window as well. It might not ever feel like we've done what we needed to do unless we go and sign someone at that price. Whereas I feel there is a window here where we don't go and spend that money but still go and do what we need to do, and it may well feel. I wonder whether we come to the end of the window without that kind of main signing, but we still got in and got 4 or 5 players maybe, and moved a lot of players on and whatever, and improved the squad. There might be a section of the fan base who still feel, we haven't quite done enough. Do you feel we need that £100 million signing to feel secure as fans, and does that even matter, or is it just is it more my view that just improve the squad?
I think I'd rebuttal with a question: do you want to beat Pep now, or do you want to wait till he leaves? Because that to me dictates what type of window you want to expect and what type of window that you want to have. I don't agree that the distance between Pep and Mikel in this team is simply depth, is simply lack of profiles, is simply a lack of player type. I don't think that's where we lost the league personally. And I think that the biggest things that we have to solve are what we've talked about on the channel in terms of a mid-block solution. I've always said, when you have a look at the window, the Euros is inevitably going to disrupt plans for pretty much every major team in the world, not named Madrid, who have got their big signing in Kylian Mbappe already settled. And so if you're not going to do that, and you're looking across the bow about whether a marquee happens or not, I think that people forget, but a marquee spend affects your spend in other signings. If we had completed Declan Rice before we completed Kai Havertz and Yuri and Timber, you don't think that those prices would have changed? Of course they would have changed. When you make a big signing, a big marquee, you let every other club know the scope of what you're kind of capable of. And so I think that it just raises every single boat in kind of the fjord, high tide in that sense. So it's a very meticulous window. I do think that the confusion, by the way, in the fan base is something purely because I've always felt this way. I have my own subjective views of what I want us to do, but I think the club are very clear about the plan. I think they've shown us that consistency pretty much in every window, no matter what links may have happened. The fans are confused. The fans are unsure about where to go with this. And I think that needs to be the biggest debate, because we're looking to the club to give us an idea of a plan to make up the gap. And right now, I think anybody that you talk to has different ideas about what that could be. There's this new craze on Twitter and on social media that the midfielder needs to be the priority. That's the magic bullet that will solve what we need to. Some people believe it's a marquee center forward. Some people believe it's, maybe just improving the squad, right? I do think that the question needs to be framed more. Do you want to beat Pep next year? Do you want to wait next year? Because then my responses change. I mean, if you're building a team for sustainable success in the future that doesn't maybe necessarily put pressure on trying to beat Pep next year, then I don't think you need a marquee. I don't think that you need those things. I think you can go and have a window where you have 4 or 5, you try to build out the squad so that there are no holes, but maybe you don't get a superstar in that sense. But if you're looking for moments, if you're looking for a team to be secure in those moments, then I think you need a marquee, a kind of central figure at some level. And the one thing that I'll end on is I think that William Saliba gave a brilliant interview recently talking about how he believes he is top 3 in his position in the Premier League. I love that. I've been saying that here. I think phase 5 is them believing that they're superstars. We know the quality of what they've got. We've got to make them believe that they are the best in their position. And it's not just William Saliba, it's the entire team. You look at the age of the squad, we're approaching prime. So I think when we had 23 and change last year, everyone's going to be 24, approaching 25. And you're looking at a team that's really starting to mature to be the superstars that they need to be if you want to win the league. And so there's that level of growth and maturation that I think is not transfer related, that I'm very excited to see for next season. But it's an unknown, and I don't know how big that gap is, and development is never linear. I don't know if everyone's going to peak at the same time. And so that's why I do believe that the market and your moves in the market need to almost guarantee that. There's no sense in dreaming about Thomas Partey if he's not available. There's no sense in dreaming and debating quality about certain players if we're not able to use them and we're not able to guarantee their peak performance when it matters. And that goes for Vieira, Emile Smith-Rowe, all those types of questions. So personally, to get off the fence, I think we need a marquee because my goal is to beat Pep. And that's the answer to that question.
And I think they will, they go hand in hand in the sense that if you want the quality to raise, you're going to end up spending that kind of money, and whether that sends the message of the marquee or not is kind of, for me, it's less important. I think this is one of the things that when you spend enough time on social media and having conversations on podcasts or whatever, you end up almost thinking, well, the club need to send a message, or the club need to improve the squad. If that, by the by, sends a message that Arsenal have signed a marquee and Arsenal are back next season, and everyone's doing lineups, everyone's saying, "Wow, brilliant," then great. But Arsenal need, as a primary focus, our thing should be, I agree with you, George, beating Pep next season and how we improve. And as I say, does that then equal marquee? No, but it probably does, considering the quality that we need to actually get in to be able to do that. So I think sometimes people go, "We need a marquee to make a statement." You don't. I don't think the messaging and the security for the fans is or should be the club's focus. You see what I mean? It may end up securing the fans' adoration by doing what they do, but I don't think that should be the main focus. Bhavs, when we come on to sort of the shape of the window and how we're looking at all this, is it going to be well, I suppose it's sort of coming back on what George was saying. Do you think we're probably going to get a marquee? Do you think that feels right, or do you think the market is dry of that, or and if so, who do you think that might be?
It depends on what you define as marquee. Is that value in terms of price tag? Is spending £60 million on Sesko marquee signing? That would have been a couple of years ago. But is marquee now £100 million plus? I think that's what fans want. They want like the 80, 90 million pound near record signing to count as marquee. So, but even then, if it was, let's say we invest on a young player who is a bit of a risk, but is expensive right now. Like if you look at Chesko's price tag right now, it's because he's got the release clause. If he doesn't have the release clause, that price tag's probably higher. And so that becomes a marquee automatically. So I think that we will sign a player of probably high value. We're talking over £70 million. But I'm just very confused of where that will be, because all the rumours of Sesko right now are very contrasting. Some people say, Arsenal's the club he's going to. And then you got rumours of, he's still deciding between Chelsea and Arsenal. He might even stay at Leipzig. And so if we don't sign Šeško, do we go for another striker of a similar price range, or do we go for the big dog? Are we using him as a smokescreen for Osimhen? I think there will be an expensive marquee signing that fans will be excited about. We will get a here we go. There will be a long Arsenal negotiation. There will be a lot of Fabrizio Romano tweets, I'll tell you that for a fact. Every minute of the updates. But yeah, I just feel like right now, especially with the Euros coming up, there will be superstars that rise in that tournament. You know, for all we know, for example, Kai Havertz could have an amazing tournament, win Germany the Euros as a striker, and everyone goes, well, do we need a striker? Got Kai Havertz now. So it's a weird thing where I think that tournament's going to dictate a lot of the superstars. And, you know, you also got Copa America as well. A lot of players that might want to sign right now are busy. They're on international duties. So it's hard to get negotiations in and Mikel to get their meetings in and, you know, have that dinner and talk about transfers.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I want to come on to another point in a second, but just to close up on that, that's exactly it. You know, people saying, we, you know, what as I keep saying, what we need to do is improve the squad. If that means a marquee, then great. But then, you know, you have to answer who that is and what a marquee is as well, which is a good point. I also feel something that I notice in transfers is essentially what will happen is Arsenal will go, or a report will come out. And someone will say, Arsenal are monitoring, the one yesterday was Joshua Zirkzee. Arsenal are monitoring Joshua Zirkzee. I don't think people quite understand what that means. Arsenal should and probably are across every situation, because if Zirkzee moves here, that might mean something over here. If that player moves here, you know, if Šeško chooses Manchester United, that means that so-and-so might be available on the market, or Leipzig are looking for a striker, and does that change the future of it? Whatever. You need to know what the jigsaw is. And something that slightly annoys me is we jump on to every single player going, oh, could he be the answer? Could he be the answer? And that sort of takes up the sort of the headspace and the, you know, and I understand it, you know, obviously people need to get their clicks in and people can talk about what they want. But I think from understanding what Arsenal are doing, sometimes that changes the narrative. They say, oh, we're all over the place. We're not focused. We don't know. Guys, you're not, then Arsenal aren't trying to please you. Their job this summer is not to make the fans feel happy. Their job is to get the right player in. And I think all these reports coming out, I think people don't necessarily understand that we should be across these situations. We should know what is happening with everyone. We should be in contact with all these people to know what the sort of the jigsaw is. Does that mean we're going to go and sign Zirkzee? No. And, you know, let's focus on what the job is. It's to improve our squad.
I think the trouble is it comes down from a lack of trust. If I trusted, or if fans trusted what the club were doing, I don't think that you'd be facing as many questions. And I think that there's a clamor for essentially this project where everybody sees incredible green shoots of improvement, but it's squeaky bum time. And there's a huge section of people saying, when is enough to see the success that people want to say that we're owed? And there's an incredible entitlement around the fan base, personally, about trophies and about deserving trophies and about winning trophies. And I don't think it'll be quelled by some domestic performance. And I think at some point, fans are going to ask, when does this project yield fruit? We were told that we needed to be patient for X amount of years, X amount of time. And that's the pressure. That's the pressure why fans are like, well, where's the plan? What are we doing? And I need to see something of authority that you're actually. Do you not feel, though, that
the club have earned that, especially in the market? Which is why it's, you know, I'm pretty relaxed about this window, and I can see, you know, I understand, you know, if we get to middle of August and nothing's changed, then we'll be having different conversations. But, you know, Bhavs, like, surely the club have earned people's trust in the market.
100%. You know, when you see the improvement we make every single year and the amount of signings we've got right, I think, there needs to be more trust. And I feel like there is as well. You know, when I speak to fans outside of social media, there isn't like oh my God, we haven't signed a player already. Oh, it's all over. Whereas it would have been a couple of years ago. And even then, we are still like, the window's not even open yet, pretty sure. It opens in that next week. So I'm not really too fussed about it right now. But yeah, I think the club deserve more trust for sure, especially Mikel and the people around him, like Edu and stuff. You know, these guys have shown that they can sign the right players, they can negotiate, they can wait for the right options to come in, they can, you know, play the games of the market sometimes, and it work out. So I think fans have got we've got a lot of experience now of looking at markets and observing them. It's not the same as it was like 5 years ago, where you might get one report. You've got reports about players following people, about players entering a car, about players catching a flight. We got every detail we need now. And so I feel like, fans themselves need to be a bit more patient. And I think we are going to get there as well. But I guarantee you, once the Euro starts and fans have something to distract themselves with, they won't be as prominent. At the moment that ends, and if we not sign a player then you're going to get a lot of, oh my God, we're going to be left behind. And also, if Man City sign someone, because, they're looking to sign maybe someone like Bruno Guimaraes. If they go and sign a marquee player like that, fans are going to go, we didn't sign him either. Oh, we're getting left behind, and it's happening again. Yeah,
you kind of brought it up there. I think it's a good point in that the aggression of the news cycle is a massive part of this. Fabrizio Romano. I would love to know how many characters he wrote about that Mbappe story. Like how many tweets he put out, or how much time he spoke about it. Like it must be in the thousands of hours in terms of dealing with that transfer just for him individually. Do you know what I mean? So when we have that level of access, I think what that does to me, it speeds up our tempo in terms of how we approach the market, and we're going, oh my God, we're here. Every day you're reading about something new, rather than say 20 years ago you'd maybe read one newspaper report a week or whatever, and you just go, well, the club will deal with it, and it's a very different thing.
Don't know if you guys remember the Higuain one from 2013, where we didn't have Fabrizio. All I had was a Sky Sports' feed, and it just rumours come from Gazzetta dello Sport. I'm like, oh my God, it's an Italian source. It's got to be legit. Gianluca Di Marzio. But you'd have to wait for like an update every 2 weeks. Like you're just waiting for an update. Now, any player we're linked to, every moment, agent spoken, his agent's dog spoken, the uncle said this, the barber said that. All the rumours come in, and an ITK from the country comes out and says, yes, it's happening. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we get a new animal every season. But I think that, look, the one thing that I will say is I think the club obviously want to do business early. Mikel's always said that and done that. I do think it informs transfer plans. Massively, by the way. The Copa America and the Euros, you can't get behind. You can't get a big marquee with a preseason this summer, in my opinion, that's participating in those tournaments. And so I do think that it plays a part. Look at João Neves, who's been loosely linked with Arsenal, for example. That's a major marquee, and I guarantee you he's going to have a great tournament. And I guarantee you after a great tournament, it's very difficult to get a big deal. Benfica already pre-tournament are saying no release clause. So, for example, I'm not saying he's the one, but I'm saying he's an example of a marquee that, for example, his price is dictated by things that are out of our control right now, and he likely won't move. I think people forget, it's not just that a player needs to be available and an agent and two clubs need to agree. It's not just that. It's that the player needs to trust that he's going to go into a stable environment. A player may want to leave, but maybe he sees the fact that he's got a Euros. He's got something that he's really got to focus on in terms of, if you were in Germany trying to bring home the first home win. These other soft factors matter, and it's a new factor to transfer season that is not normal, that I think a lot of fans need to maybe get a little bit more accustomed to. Whether it was the Olympics, the Copa, I think you delaying your ability to meet your new teammates early, and especially for coaches like Mikel, Maresca, these positional coaches that are incredibly dictated about you understanding the system and the rotations that you're going to be a part of, they need that time to work. And you don't get the time to work if you're going to be off at a tournament, and you're going to need vacation, by the way, etc. So, I think it'll be an interesting next couple of weeks. I personally feel that there's actually going to be a quick splurge of activity between now and June 30th in terms of the start of the window. And then I think it could be dead while the Euros are going through. And then there could be a late surge at the end of the window, as opposed to it being maybe a consistent acquiring.
Yeah. We can't forget as well, it's been a few years since we had a tournament at the end of the year. 2021, the World Cup was in December. Yeah. So, even when the players come back, say if we've signed someone and he's had a tournament that's gone right towards the end, he's going to take time to even come back in and get him for pre-season. We're not going to have I think our pre-season starts in July. A lot of players might not be there. Let's just say, Havertz's home tournament, he could get to the final. Bukayo Saka for England and Declan Rice as well. So it's going to be weird to see how we adapt. I remember that season as well, we had a slow start. Was it 21? Was it 21? No, did we have a slow start? We have a good start. I'm not sure. But it was one of those windows one of those seasons where I think it's also going to have to. It's going to be a bit weird, a bit adaptation as well, and definitely signings towards the end.
Yeah, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. It's going to affect how we move things through, and I guess we'll see sort of how it all shakes out. I want to come to a bit of a controversial topic, well, depending on how you look at it, and just sort of give a few caveats up front. this is a sensitive subject. We're going to be talking about Saka and sort of the English media's treatment of him. There are people who know a lot more than me about this. I'm obviously going to be sort of contributing and giving my opinion, but I think Darren Lewis in the Mirror has spoken really well on this. Clive and Arsenal Vision spoken well on this, etc., etc. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff out there, but I think we should address it because it's important to talk about it. And it's Bukayo Saka's treatment in terms of the headlines, the usage of his photos and stuff in the wake of England's loss to Iceland. I think in these cases, it's sometimes easy to shake it off as just an isolated incident. Well, maybe it was just the pic. It just happened to be the picture. But I think in tandem with all the other things that we know in terms of the treatment of the players post the Euros in 2021, the treatment of Sterling in the media, all the stuff that we've seen, the abuse of Bukayo Saka, and all that stuff. We're starting to build up a picture. Bhavs, I think it's maybe best to come to you first. It is a concern, and it is a concern how we move forward from this. Saka himself appears to kind of, I don't know how he feels sort of personally, but sort of in a public sense, he appears to be sort of taking all this stuff in his stride. But I don't think you should have to. How do we approach this as fans? How do we sort of process this as a football community, and how do we move forward from this? Because this feels like it's a problem that isn't really going away in terms of sort of the treatment of players of colour in the British media, and yeah, it is a concern.
It is. The headline itself, I think the main things was the newspaper articles with Saka's photo on it. I don't read newspapers. I think a lot of people nowadays my age don't read newspapers. So that just seeing that itself, we're like, okay, well, I think they're being clever. If I'm being honest, I think this newspapers they're clever enough to understand that just putting Saka's photos there is going to get out on social media, and it's really, really poor from them. But what can we expect? We've seen this before with Raheem Sterling and other players like that. So I'm not surprised to even see that. I think also in terms of football and how it's going for the young people, it's become very tribalistic. Everything's like, oh, my player's better than your player, and so every time he has a poor game, I'm gonna have to show it, and that's why we're seeing it more and compile. I think in Bukayo Saka's case, he's held to a different standard as well. Even in terms of the fact that he wasn't even in our top 3 players of the season at Arsenal. That's crazy to me. I feel like as a player himself, he deserves more respect, and he's become a victim of consistency, of just being there every single year. People going, oh, well, he's good now. I know he's good. I want to find other players I can say are good as well. But in terms of the media itself, I'm not surprised. I've seen it for so many years, and there's a reason why nobody reads newspapers anymore, especially people my age. Maybe the oldest, they read it, fair enough. But I feel like they're being clever. I feel like they know what they're doing, and it's really, really poor, because they realise that putting his photo there will lead to people talking about it, like on this podcast, like, on social media and tweeting in it, and it'll get out there more often. And that's what they want. They want clicks, and they got clicks.
How do we approach that though, Bhavs? Because, we can call it out on social media, and we can go after whatever. What needs to change in your view?
I think sackings, maybe, I don't know, something like where they realise it's a repercussion. I think a lot of the newspapers do stuff without any repercussions because they go, well, what are they going to say? There's nothing actually illegal in what they've done, but we know what they're doing, and that's the thing. It's actually like pushing forwards, maybe boycotting. Stop buying their products. That's as simple as that. If their sales go down, they're gonna have to change something, right? But that's the only way you can get to them, is hurting their pockets. And right now, that's not gonna be the case. People are gonna keep seeing the articles that get posted on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. They'll see more and more of that newspaper article, and they'll get exactly what they want. So maybe it's not biting. Maybe it's just letting them have their little corner and just not looking at them and ignoring them completely.
George, I know you have strong feelings on Saka specifically in terms of the victim of the consistency and so on. He didn't win our player of the season. He wasn't even in the top 3. I think to some degree there is, if we're just speaking about Saka specifically at Arsenal and how he's viewed, I think there is a massive victim of consistency here. I think what Saka does is so not normal, but has become normal because of his consistency, and he is a victim of that. I know you have strong feelings on this, so I don't want to sort of lace the question too much, but I suppose, is this something that is fixed through the messaging around Saka? I've long felt that maybe Mikel needs to be a little bit stronger with Saka in terms of saying, look, you need to realise what this is, and especially English fans. I think it's also to do with us not accepting or not sort of just standing by when, you know, things like the limping narrative come around. It can start as a joke, and then it sort of bleeds over into actual news and actual media, which I think is shocking, really. I mean, I don't want to list this too much. I know you've got thoughts on this.
I think there's nothing that I would tell Saka to do. This is not the boy's fault. I'm very strong views on it because I'm not trying to be a white knight. I'm not trying to be a moralistic character because I'm sorry, English fans have a history of doing this to their best sons. And, you know, it doesn't always have to be a race card. I think one of the most famous examples you could argue could be David Beckham in terms of the way that you guys treat them. So it's not purely just that. But I will say the consistency to which the race card is applied to the number of players that you guys consistently do it to in terms of Jadon Sancho, 007, Rashford, Saka, Sterling. The limping narrative is absolutely ridiculous. I will not hear that from absolutely anybody. And when that comes from a major ESPN outlet in Kilbane, and let's name the person that did it, it does deserve a sacking. Like, you're asking me what to do. We need to be allies. And, you know, I got really upset on social media that I don't understand it. Like, this is your boy. England, I'm talking to you. This is your boy right now. Okay? This isn't about a tribal nature, about clubs. You're approaching a tournament, and you're having somebody critique your boy who has been probably your best England performer in the last 18 months, 2 years. And fans are okay to accept that for a cheap laugh. I don't understand. You know, we're talking about there might be question marks in terms of his goals and assists. I'm sorry, mate. 34 goals and assists. Are we just going to sit here and lie? And you know what, mate? Like, I'm going to go in on Arsenal fans a little bit too. I think it's utterly ridiculous that Arsenal did not put Bukayo Saka top 3. Completely think that it was fully to do with confidence and voter fatigue. I think it had completely to do with trying to platform other people, and it was wrong. He was one of the most consistent players this season, from start to finish. There's players that I feel like we could maybe isolate 6 to 7 months of brilliant play across the squad. Bukayo Saka in our worst periods was our best player. And people forget that. And it's consistent, by the way. And it's not just in metrics in terms of output. It's not just in metrics in terms of creativity. It's not just metrics in terms of defensive ability. Whatever metric you want to critique, Bukayo Saka is top 2, top 3 in. Period, end of story. And I struggle to not understand why he doesn't get the acclaim he deserves. I really do, in terms of doing things the right way. And this is why I don't blame the boy. And this is why I really feel it's wrong to even assume Mikel should talk to him about anything he does, because he's a humble professional.
No, I wasn't suggesting Mikel talk to him. I'm saying Mikel talk to the media and protect him.
Yeah, well, I think he needs to do that. But I think we as fans, which is where it comes from, need to put pressure on these news outlets to be better, to demand better, and to have more journalistic integrity. I think that this needs to be the case, because ultimately, if you have a manager do it, it's going to become tribal, for me at least. I think that it would be good for a manager to do. It's not bad. I mean, you're never going to say no to support, but I don't think you change anything unless you're willing to have a wider conversation about the standard to which you hold journalistic integrity to, because it's utterly ridiculous, and it's not right that Bukayo Saka has to do this. He's a role model. He's humble. By all intensive purposes, he's not got a mean streak in his body. But you know what, mate? I'm going to tell you something. He's limping because he's getting kicked. And I guarantee you one day he's going to retaliate. And what do you think the story is going to be? About a young man who is of a certain color, who's retaliating for no reason, quote, end quote. I'm telling you it's going to happen. And it's not right, mate. Like, I don't want to beat around the bush for what is clear discrimination and bias. And I think that when you're starting to lie on TV, it doesn't matter if you're trying to joke and become personable. Everyone's trying to copy the CBS mold about being relatable. And I'm sorry, lying about somebody so that you can get a cheap laugh, and doing it consistently, by the way, is not how you get fan appreciation. And I think if fans put more pressure and they cut that out and make it not acceptable, that for me is everything that I've been told about helping people in these situations that don't have the right opportunities as you, has always been centered on allyship. And that is about you, a friend, speaking up and being an ally to your peers. And I know it's weird to talk about that because Bukayo Saka is a superstar and we don't feel connected, but we are connected to these people and these players. And I think that, the fans should do a much better job across the board for not allowing not just Bukayo Saka, 007 narratives from Sancho, not allowing the Rashford implications to become widespread. Attack the issue. Don't attack the person. And far too often we see people attack the person and we do the issue.
Yeah, I think well said, George. Look, this is a massive, massive topic that goes beyond football, but we can kind of do our bit in it. And I think you're right in terms of the allyship, in terms of being surrounding the player and sort of collectively supporting the player in any way we can is obviously probably one of the only ways we can really affect things. But I also feel the clubs and institutions, England and Arsenal specifically, have a duty and a right when those sorts of things are happening to take care of their players. And it's hard because it's all you could take an isolated incident and go, but that was a joke, or that was a mistake. But it's like we have to view this in context. We have to view this in a history of this happening to players like Bukayo, and then sort of take action. And it may feel, I think I saw some rumors about FIFA potentially, if there's racist chanting that continues in a stadium, the team would lose the game. And I support that as a potential new rule. It has to go that far because in the end, the sport, yes, okay, it matters to us. It doesn't really matter. Like the sport, okay, it matters in terms of the what we feel and we're connected to it. The outcome of a singular game or whatever. These are people's lives and their livelihoods, and that has to be the priority. So, yeah, I think it's a complicated issue that we'll continue talking about, but I think we should continue to talk about and continue to bring up whenever it is kind of relevant. Bhavs, I don't know. I think you had something to say.
Yeah, I think the issue is that we've not learned, not us as fans, but the media as well. Like in terms of we've seen it so many times, from all the way back to the 1980s, 90s, and now to the 2000s. The fact that it's such a reoccurring theme that it's just something that people don't want to move past is very annoying, because it's like we've been there before, we've had these conversations before about different players. Why do we have to keep bringing it forwards in the new society? We know what's wrong, especially when you go to the school systems in the UK nowadays. We're taught about racism from a young age, so you're more conscious of it, and yet still it seems like people are even more open about it sometimes. They make it part of their personality traits, and I feel like that's where you see social media nowadays. They're trying to be different and be edgy, right? And that's how they use it, and it's really, really sick and really poor. But it becomes accepted. People go, oh well, he's just sick in the head. It's fine. Doesn't really matter. And they let it go past. There's no repercussions. People feel very safe to say what they want on social media, because there's nothing that you can do to them. And that's the issue nowadays, is there is no way to actually get back and go, no, this is why you shouldn't do it. And repercussion, this is the reason why. If you do this, you're going to get in trouble. There is no trouble. Even with the whole, Twitter, I've got the whole Twitter blue and you verify yourself. There's people that are still verified and they're given the IDs in, and they're still saying some really bad stuff. Can't get back at them. Yeah,
I've long been a supporter of, I think you should have to link your ID to a social media account in terms of, and then because what have you got to hide? If you have nothing to hide, then there's no problem. And there's a data aspect to that and a data farming side of things. But this is, I would much prefer governments get involved in social media, because I think it's gone beyond being allowed in private hands. But anyway, that's another topic. We'll continue to talk about this whenever it comes up. I think we should continue to support Saka and players like him who receive that kind of what you might call unconscious bias. I would argue is maybe even conscious bias. I think it's something we should continue to talk about on the pod, and we make no apologies for doing it. There are loads of people who speak about this really, really well. So I would recommend to go listen to those people on this and sort of solutions and so on and so forth. Bit of a gear switch, but unfortunately we have to do it. We also had some news this week about Aaron Ramsdale, and in terms of the potential price tag of him, which we've spoken about before, I've spoken about before, in terms of there was a £15 million price tag that was going around that was potentially associated to him. And then it came out I think it was over the weekend, that Arsenal were looking for £50 million. And again, not to make this whole thing about social media, but there was a bit of a backlash on social media. Well, not even that. But I do think in terms of how we approach sales this summer, I think sometimes people go, you see that price tag and you go, 50 million, we're never getting that. It's like, well, how do you think every negotiation starts? This is how every good negotiation starts. We're not going to get £50 million for Aaron Ramsdale. But I think what is encouraging from the club, George, is the idea that we're, supposedly maybe briefing to the media, or certainly there are messages coming out that we're not going to be lowballed. And this is the thing. This is my whole thing with the sales thing, and specifically with Ramsdale. I've sat here on podcasts and so on for years and years talking about how Arsenal get done in the market through sales, but until we're in a position of strength, I won't be too bothered about it. We are now in that position of strength, and I'm glad to see that, hopefully the messaging is, and hopefully will continue to be over the summer, that we're not going to be messed around. We are going to overprice, let's say, our players as a starting point, and then hopefully actually get what they deserve in the market. But yeah, what did you think of that news?
I was happy. Like you, I think that Arsenal need to change their sale narrative, and the only way to do that is by being confident, not outrageous, but also just understanding that our players have value. And I think just because you don't want a player doesn't mean that then or therefore your power in negotiations are gone. I mean, he's on a long-term contract. There was no reason for us to sit there and throw around price tags of 15 million, which, by the way, I don't understand how James Trafford has a 15 million pound price tag and Aaron Ramsdale has the same. I mean, if we're going to take links in terms of reports, I don't understand how the Premier League experience, I don't care that he's not been playing for a year, but the idea that there isn't a ceiling improvement or there isn't a method of improving your development there was crazy to me. And I think that Arsenal need to provide sample here ultimately. Like I think I can provide context for every single person and every single sale as much as I can, but the facts of the matter are I don't think I've seen one good sale under Edu's tenure, bar maybe Joe Willock. I
would say I would put Balogun in there. I would. I think considering his first, obviously that's a young player, but I would say Balogun's in there.
Potentially. I think you could argue. I mean, I think 25 was low because that was the initial bid, right? And then you're looking at add-ons to continue. But maybe you could say that. But again, Joe Willock, Balogun, that's it. Across 4 years now, approaching 5 that we're talking about. It's not good enough. And it's not the total value. It's about maximizing value. Look, shocked George had an argument on Twitter. But the one biggest fight that I've had, whether it's academy players or
argument of the week.
Yeah, argument of the week.
Of the day, Bhavs.
Like
should have a section for it.
I'm all about value. And I think that Arsenal have not got value, simply put, across any of their sales and their departures. And that needs to change. And I think I was told by many people that we have to wait for Arsenal to be in a position of power to sell, right? This is the time. And like you've made this point before, Alex, like when is the point that you're going to admit that we are able to sell well? I mean, we're fighting for titles. We've got people on good contracts. Aaron Ramsdale, by the way, and even Eddie Nketiah, I've been seeing people saying that they're on crazy wages. They're not on crazy wages. £100,000 a week right now is the starting go-to rate for any mid-table striker club. So, I mean, I don't agree that it's a wage issue. We haven't inflated the wages insanely. So, look,
I think the position of strength thing means you don't have to sell. I think this is what people are kind of misunderstanding. You don't have to, like, for example, with Ramsdale, you don't have to sell him. Kieran Tierney, the rumours coming out that, £10 million, people are saying, that he's actually massively depreciated the asset. Well, we've got quite a few years of service out of him. He's not going to sign a new deal. I don't think that's a crazy value, but whatever. Regardless of it, you don't have to sell. You're in a good you're fine. When you're in a position where you're trying to move up the table, you have to cast away more sort of quality in that way. Kieran Tierney is a quality player. He's a quality player. He could help Arsenal next season. No problem at all. We're looking for an overlapping fullback. Look, can he stay fit, etc., etc. But I'm not talking about individual cases. I'm saying as a whole, as a club, your assets are better because you're in a position of strength. So you literally don't have to sell. And therefore, when clubs know you don't have to sell, they're going to take you more seriously. We might have to hold our nerve this summer. And I think, George, what you're saying about academy grads, the one that gets me is the Amari Hutchinson one. It's like, why are Chelsea getting that money when 6 months and we could have put him on that loan to Ipswich Town and we could have got that £20 million? So
I would love
stuff like that.
I would love to have a conversation. Hopefully we can maybe get a guest in to debate this because I think that there's been a problem.
Charlie Patino on.
You get your mate Charlie one.
Look. But Charlie's an example made of us getting value, by the way. Charlie's gone on 2 loans now at championship level, and he's now in the last year of contract this summer. we're not going to get value on Charlie Patino, and there's no reason we shouldn't have. Okay, we can look at Lino Sousa. Why did he leave? He left for development, guys. I mean, he went on loan immediately afterwards. It wasn't a case. He didn't trust Arsenal. Roel Walters, Amario Cozier-Duberry, Carl Hein. Now we're all supposedly really clamoring to get those contracts going. You know, in January, we were rushing to get Keon Edwards, Zayn Monlouis, and Mauro Bandera out on loans. Loans they should have had back in September. It's about, and by the way, that's just the academy. I haven't even gone into the aspect about how many frees we let go in terms of as a club on outgoings. We have a history of that. And I think when you start to look at Kieran Tierney, mate, like, look, £10 million, it's not amazing, but it's a start. It's about you slowly getting rid of players that you believe don't contribute to the squad and making those prime decisions early. That for me has been the biggest issue. You know, Aaron Ramsdale, we understand the situation. We don't have to sell him. But one thing that I would demand is a loan, and a loan early. If you're not going to sell him and you're not going to get the interest that you want, and you're reading the market and you're not getting something, then organize a loan for him that, you know, lets him stay in the Premier League, that we can retain value. He's got 3 years left, a good loan with a reminder to the Premier League about his actual value, by the way, will be beneficial for Arsenal. And we should sort that, and we should sort that early. So I think it's just about being decisive in the market. And the last thing I'll say is, you don't go to a flea market and you look at a frame that you want, and, you know, if the sale price is, you know, $10, you say, I'm going to give you $5 for it. That's going to be a ploy all summer. But I think that we can't just assume and just say, well, you know what, we pay large wages. There's a context for why that club didn't get the value that it deserved, and ignore the overarching story, which is Edu has made 2 successful sales. If you want to argue Balogun, I'll take it, but Joe Willock, and then that's it. In 5 years, just not good enough. Give me 1 a year at the minimum.
Yeah, would take that. Yeah. But Bhavs, how are you feeling about the sort of the sales perspective? Because, you know, I think there is room for optimism. I think there's, you know, if again, because we are now in this position where we also have room. I think people say, we're going to be paying their wages, or whatever. In terms of a top club, we have a huge amount of growth potential in terms of wages. So carrying someone on 50k a week these days isn't the end of the world. I was just looking at Ramsdale's situation there. We've got I think it's a club option for another year, and it expires in 2026. You know, so say we activate that option, and if we've got 3 years left of Ramsdale. You're like, this is. I think what it is kind of George nailed it there with the being decisive in the market. It's about making early decisions. For me, I think with Ramsdale, there will be a decision out there. There will be a club out there. So I would personally look at holding our nerve, maybe signing someone, or maybe sort of having someone lined up, and then, you know, waiting till sort of quite late in the window to solve that. Because you either solve it and get someone in, or you keep Ramsdale, which is a great decision and a great option. But, you know, forgetting sort of individual cases for a second, how are you sort of feeling about our sort of sales position?
I feel like when we talk about being in a position of power, we're also in a power of teams want to be like Arsenal right now. You know, we're not talking like Man City, but we're the team fighting Man City for a title. So the likes of Zinchenko and co, Jesus are players that brought us to the level to fight towards Man City. So teams that are below us right now will look at players like that as well. And they will look at Arsenal type players to go, these players, you know, can play the system that we want to play to emulate those two teams. And so that's something that we, you know, when Liverpool were in that position of power as well, even before they won the titles, they were selling players like Dom Solanke for a massive amount of money. And I think that's where a lot of the position comes through is, you look at the likes of Chelsea even now, talking about Armando Broja and the amount of sales, how much money they're going to get for that. It's fans are looking at and comparing, going, why can't we get it for Eddie? Why can't we get it for so and so? You know, why is Charlie Patino going to go for potentially next to nothing when he could have gone for maybe upwards of, you know, look how much Cole Palmer went for, you know, 30-40 million pounds before even a single season of first team football. So I think that's what it is. We've seen the other teams' youngsters more than anything go for massive amount of money. Players like Lavia, players like, you know, even Brojo's going to go right now. It's Dom Solanke in the past, and we've not had that as much. Balogun's one, Willock's the other, but that's about it. And you've got youngsters that have come through, and I think the Hutchinson one was an example of the player was kind of sold at Arsenal that he wasn't going to get into the team. He wasn't given a route. I think that's what, and even I think his dad came out after, or his brother came out, and he said, "Look, now, and you can see now why he's playing, because he actually got a few minutes in the Chelsea first team, and he goes that wasn't going to happen at Arsenal." So I feel like a lot of the issue with the youngsters is that they're told they can get into the first team, but they're never actually given the pathway right now. There's no clear examples, even though Saka is in the team. They're not seeing anyone else past that of the next crop of youngsters. And don't forget, look, Charlie Patino was seen as, they were saying he was the best hell-end talent since Wilshere, you know. And he looks like he's going to leave now, which is crazy because 2 years ago, he was definitely going to make it into the first team. And so how does the likes of Wanyeri see that? How does Chido Obi say that as well? You know, we talk about rumours of Dortmund and other clubs are going to sign him there as well. Does he see the actual pathway, of guaranteed pathway? Because I feel like Arsenal tell players they can make it there, but how many times do they actually get him into the first team? I think that's the example. But you're right, Chelsea are more decisive in loans. They're ruthless. They go, look, you know, if you're not making it in the first team, you're going to get out on loan. They're going to loan you again and again and again and again and again. Sometimes it don't work out. There's many players that hasn't worked out. But when it does work out, there's so much profit and there's so much aggression in how they approach it. Arsenal can take notes from that. And, you know, we've heard rumours from David Ornstein anyways that Arsenal are looking to invest heavily in youth now. So I hope it changes. I hope they realise that. But I also feel like just even being in the training ground itself, that environment is just so good, so comfortable. Players don't want to leave that and go to Shrewsbury Town on loan. They want to be at Arsenal. They want to be in the Arsenal, you know, they want to go to London Colney, or is it called the Sober Reality Centre, or whatever it's called now. They want to go there instead.
You've literally
because it's so comfortable, it's so perfect. I can see why Rob Holding was crying when he left Arsenal. I can see why, you know. That's the environment. If I was leaving, I'd cry as well. I was crying just leaving it in general after one day. So Arsenal right now feel comfortable with the youngsters. There is no like a clear, aggressive plan. Get him on loan, then in the first team a few years' time. But it's worked. Look at Saliba. He was now a youngster, but we signed him as a young player. He went out on loan and came back, and now he's a very integral part of the first team. There's not clarity right now with our young players of who's going to break in, who's going to go next, and who's going to be that talent to actually show the other youngsters their pathway again.
Yeah, I think there's a meta conversation about the academy. I think, you know, you can't guarantee that, but what I think you can do is basically you can look at an academy. You have to assume everyone in your academy, well, not everyone, in an ideal world, 95% of the academy kids aren't going to play Arsenal first team. Ideal. Literally like the best possible version we have, you know, 5 players that we had, you know, we had a couple of years ago from Hale End. You know, that may be even a smaller percentage. I'm not very good at maths. But, you know, that is... So you're looking at most of your players, pretty much all of them, are not going to play first team football for Arsenal. So then, okay, what else can we do? And that has to be aggressive use of the loan market. It has to be using the sort of the market in terms of getting the best players in, etc., etc. You know, it looks like we're starting to do that.
I think
just to finish.
I think. Sorry, like really quickly, we need to make more clear and earlier decisions. It's not just a first team issue, guys. I mean, by the way, Arthur Okonkwo as well. He had a brilliant loan at Sturm Graz, became Premier League 2 goalkeeper of the year, and then now leaving on a free. Explain, like, Arthur Okonkwo isn't some old prospect that we've never heard of. Like, and he's 22. He's 22, and he's excelled in every single loan that he's gone to. Why isn't he getting a fee? Why aren't we selling? Why aren't we making that decision? Yeah. You look at a Mario Cozier-Dewberry, by the way, 14 goals and assists and 17 starts the season before. Sorry, but what else do you have to do if you're a young attacker, okay, and you're looking to prove to other people that you've got what it takes to make the next step up? I'd say 14 goals and assists and 17 starts is a pretty damn good record. So I think that's part of the problem, and it wouldn't surprise me, by the way, that Roel Walters, who we've all seen in countless training sessions, and Mikel spoke about, we have a defensive issue at right back and right center back. If he's not going to get a point at this time in the team, he's going to leave. And then, of course, he's in the last year of his contract, and you're sitting there. It's not the fact that you're losing Roel Walters. It's the fact that I'm losing Arthur Okonkwo, Karl Hein, Mario Cozier-Dewberry, and Roel Walters. And by the way, the time before that, I'm losing Neo Sousa. And, you know, I think we have this Amari Hutchinson. We have countless examples in the last 18 months where we're losing so much potential value to players that maybe don't have a future at the Arsenal first team, but they have a future in terms of a top 5 league. And in that sense, you can get 5-10 million pounds. And it matters, mate. It matters, especially in terms of today's era of profit and sustainability rules, and in terms of pure profit. I mean, to be able to churn out 5 to 10 assets every now and then, it adds up.
Yeah, and 10 million at an academy level It's incredible. It's incredible. It's an incredible. Probably run the entire centre for a year or so. Let's. I just want to finish up on this, maybe because we're going to come to some Euro stuff, but maybe talk about that next time. We're sort of approaching the end of the episode. I want us to ask. Speaking more specifically, then let's just look at the first team. What do we think represents? And I want to add a huge caveat that value, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and value is in the eye of the team that's buying you. Of course, I get that.
So what you're saying is they're ugly.
What I'm saying is I hate everyone in the team, and they're all ugly. Let's take 3 players, and I want to look at Reece Nelson, I want to look at Eddie Nketiah, and I want to look at Emile Smith-Rowe, because those are the kind of the Hale End grads that have come into the first team, whatever. If we were to sell them this summer, what's ballpark figures that we might be happy with in terms of course, are we selling them abroad? Are we selling them, domestically? What time we sell them, etc., etc. I'm talking a range of outcome that we think we'd be happy with in terms of, let's start with Eddie Nketiah, George.
35 million pounds. You can do 30 plus 5, but I think he's a 35 million pound player in general. His years in the league
to any club.
Premier League mid-table clubs, which I think he has no shortage of suitors for. West Ham, Palace, Wolves, you name it. I think there's going to be Ipswich. There's going to be plenty, and he's already had plenty of interest at the 30 million pound mark. I think fair value is 35, but I can accept 30.
Yeah, I think abroad, something like 25. If you're selling abroad, maybe. But I think something between 25 and 35, I think is about right. Because, also there was, I think Bhavs mentioned earlier about Amanda Broja. There's, 30 million pounds already being mentioned for a guy who's got 6 goals in the Premier League. Eddie scored a hat-trick this season. We have to accept what this guy is, and the experience he has, by the way, experience being in matchday squads, the experience in terms of, also, Baz, what you mentioned earlier, which I think is a good point about playing under Mikel. I'm sure a lot of the Cole Palmer, fee is dictated by that. Now, I'm not suggesting that Mikel holds the same sway as Pep, but when you're delivering what he's delivering at the top level of football and you're regarded in that way, we can start to add a bit of a premium, I feel. So 25 to 35, having been coached by Mikel Arteta for 4 or 5 years and actually at youth level as well, I think that's achievable. Do you?
Yeah, I feel like it is achievable. I feel like a lot of it comes down to demand and what teams want them. You're right. If it's European, they're not going to have the same. If Balogun last year had gone to a Premier League club, it would have gone maybe 35 million pounds, a bit beyond that. They ended up at 25. So I feel like with Reece, there seems to be a demand. With even last year when he was on a free transfer, the likes of Brighton wanting him, and clubs like that operate smartly. So seeing the clubs that want these players, and I think the most is going to be Emile Smith-Rowe for sure. If the likes of Villa still want him, which they wanted him heavily a few years ago, and other clubs of that caliber want Emile Smith-Rowe, we could demand a very high fee for that, especially in the Premier League. I mean, and look, I'm not against the whole loan or obligation to buy either. We don't have the money this season. A lot of these big signings go on loans, and then they get bought on obligations with the certain appearances. And I feel like that might be the route where not every club is going to spend £30 million straight away. But the idea that we can keep Eddie, keep Emile, keep Reece, and they can still play a part of the first team next season. That's where we have the position of power. We don't have this urgent need to get rid of these guys this year. They've still got long-term contracts as well. They're not in the final years of the contracts either. But I feel like just selling clubs that these players aren't for sale is going to just increase their value regardless, And I feel like that's where Emile is going to be the most close to that, because I feel like Reece and Eddie are kind of on their way out, whereas Emile, you could see a part of the first team squad next season.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where we can demand the most amount of money and go upwards beyond 30, 40. We're talking £50 million.
Okay. So off the fence, range of outcomes for Smith-Rowe for you, Bhavs?
I think if he's gonna go, I'll aim for 50, and I'm gonna probably get 40.
George?
35 to 45 million pounds.
I think, the Emile one feels like the biggest range of outcome to me. I think if he goes abroad, there could be a £30 million, but I genuinely think to a Premier League club on like deadline day, that
we
could be a
rejected
45.
25 from Villa, didn't we? And even I swear we rejected 30 the year before as well.
Yeah, 25 and 30.
That
and also, he's an exciting signing for any club that signs him. 100%. People will be very excited about Emile Smith-Rowe. Oh my God, Emile Smith-Rowe's our club. So
if you're a Fulham looking to do something, say Iwobi goes on deadline day or whatever, and you've got the money for Palhinha or whatever, why not? Why wouldn't he be £45 million to a Fulham on a deadline day when they're looking for something? You see what I mean? So I think there's a real range of outcomes there. Finally, let's come to Reece. Bhavs, I'll come back to you. What do we feel?
I feel like with his contract as well, having signed that last season, we're talking start at least at 20, 25. You have to start there. And he's a quality player as well, honestly. You know, when he gets first team minutes, we've not seen him have a full season of starting for a long time. Maybe when he was at Hoffenheim, when he was, I think, named one of the Bundesliga rookies of the year. So without that, even without starting, he's got such a high caliber. I feel like you're aiming for 25, and with the clubs that want him being in the Premier League, you can aim for that and probably get it as well. But start the negotiations at a high point and then bring it lower. Don't start lower and get it lower and lower after that. We've seen with the likes of Bernd Leno, you know, how much he went for after that. So I'm aiming for 25, and whoever comes underneath that, I'll accept it.
Yeah, Leno was another poor sale. Yeah, I think Reece is probably going to be the lowest of the three for me. I think again, to a Premier League club, maybe £20 million, 22 and a half, something like that. I think probably to abroad, we might be looking a little bit lower than that. And again, depends when it happens. But yeah, George, your thoughts on that?
Not much to add. I just think when you talk about abroad, anything above £25 million is difficult to any major league. I'll be honest with you, unless you're talking about like your prime striker. I think it's very rare to really get the £30 million mark. But the thing that I'm saying is I'm looking at all of these guys and they have Premier League interest, mate. And Premier League interest has a different market. There's a Premier League market and then there's a foreign market. And I don't think that any of these players have significant interest abroad. I think even Reece, look at it. Brighton is extremely interested in Reece and has been for 2 years. So I think if you were to sell to a Brighton, what's that worth? You're telling me you're not going to ask at least £25 million to Brighton? Like they can afford that. And he's on pretty good wages as well. So I'd say the range is the same, but I just think anytime you demand £25 million or more for a foreign buy, then you're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, that could, again, we could look into the loan with buy option, or, there's always sorts of ways to sort of structure deals and stuff. And it feels like,
Klarna.
Pay with Klarna. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about sales over the course of the window, and a lot more about I think we will probably cover transfers at some point over the course of the summer.
Not sure.
Possibly. Maybe. As the sirens ring out in Toronto. Look, pleasure as always. Thank you so much. We did some scouting on Yusuf Fofana. We've done some scouting on Benjamin Sesko, which you can both find on YouTube memberships or on Patreon if you choose to do so. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial on Patreon to check those out, and all of our other podcasts. We're going to be doing some other scouting this week. I've actually decided we're going to do. Who do you fancy, George?
Jack Wilshere. Looks like a good player.
Jack Wilshere, Soccer Aid 2024 scouting.
Left number 8.
Yeah, we'll have a look. But you can check that out. Thanks as always for watching us. Really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and Spotify, etc., etc. We had because we were speaking on our exclusive pod in the week about a sign off. We've got yes guys, and we now need a sign off. And
guys.
No. Bye, guys. Yeah, maybe not. Someone said, someone had a really good comment, and I can't remember what it was.
In terms of our Patreon.
If we give George the outro, we'll be here for extra 25 minutes.
Yeah, no, true. Oh, here it is. So someone suggested we should say, where is it? Thank you to all of you for being here and for keeping it Arsenal. I like keep it Arsenal.
Keep it Arsenal.
Thoughts?
No.
Let us know in the comments what you think. Let us know in the comments. We need like a sign off.
If the comments like it, they like it.
Okay, if you like it, you like it. Maybe it could be touch balls. Who knows? Thanks.
It's definitely not.
Thanks as always for being here, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal. Peace.
Peace.
Thoughts?
Make it work.